On a rainy Thursday, Richard Vaughn, the mentor I trusted, looked away as he fired me, erasing my 5 years of sacrifice at Vertex Dynamics with 3 cold words. It's just business. Betrayed and discarded, I vowed to uncover the truth that would burn their lies to the ground. My name is Jordan Blake. 5 years ago, I stepped into Vertex Dynamics with nothing but a suitcase and a burning need to prove myself. The company was a disaster, a ship taking on water with no one at the helm. Revenue languished at $6 million, stagnant for years. Clients were abandoning us, lured by competitors with slicker pitches and deeper pockets. The employees? They were shells, dragging themselves through the day, their spirit drained. I was brought on as VP of Sales, but the title felt like a cruel jest. I wasn't leading a team. I was racing to douse a fire that threatened to burn the whole place down. My first day is still vivid. The office smelled of stale coffee and despair. My desk, a rickety relic, groaned under a pile of reports that screamed failure. I sat there, staring at the numbers, wondering if I'd bitten off more than I could chew. I'd come from nothing, a small town, no silver spoon, just a stubborn streak and a knack for convincing people. I'd fought for every opportunity, and Vertex was my biggest yet. Failure wasn't an option. The CEO, Richard Vaughn, was the first to make me believe I could save the sinking ship. He was a master of charm, with silver hair and suits that cost more than my rent. His smile could disarm anyone, make you feel like you were his closest confidant. "Jordan," he'd say, his hand heavy on my shoulder, "you're the one who's going to turn this around." His voice carried a warmth that pulled you in, made you want to prove him right. I did. I wanted to believe in him, in Vertex, in the dream he painted. Richard wasn't just a boss. He felt like a guide, someone who saw potential in me when I doubted myself. Over coffee, he'd share stories of his early days, how he'd built Vertex from a garage startup to a contender. "Trust is the key," he'd say, leaning close, eyes locked on mine. "Sell trust, and the world's yours." I soaked up every word, eager to earn his respect, to show him I was worthy of his faith. So I threw myself into the work. 80-hour weeks became my life. I'd make cold calls at midnight, my voice steady despite the exhaustion, persuading skeptical prospects to give us a shot. I'd board red-eye flights to Chicago, Seattle, anywhere a deal hung in the balance. In boardrooms, I'd pitch with my heart racing, knowing one misstep could lose us millions. Sleep was a distant memory, my apartment just a place to change clothes before diving back in. The sales team was in shambles when I arrived, disorganized, defeated, 1 foot out the door. But I saw something in them, a spark waiting to be ignited. I rebuilt them, piece by piece. I trained them not just to sell, but to believe. In our morning huddles, I'd pace the room, marker in hand, and drill it into them. We're not pushing software. We're building trust. Make them believe in us, and they'll stay. They listened. Sarah, my sales manager, was the first to get it. She was sharp, quick to read people, and became my anchor. Mike, the rookie, had a gift for sealing deals with a grin. Lena could spot a client's doubt before they even spoke. We became more than a team. We were a family. We celebrated every victory, no matter how small. A signed contract meant drinks at the bar. A new account meant high fives and laughter. Slowly, the office started to hum with energy. The silence gave way to purpose. It took 3 years of grinding, relentless work, but the numbers told the story. By year 4, we hit $12 million in revenue, double what Vertex had when I started. Clients who dismissed us were now our loudest champions. The board, a group of stone-faced suits who'd barely glanced my way at first, started summoning me to their meetings. Their praise was curt but real. "Solid work, Blake," they'd say, and I'd nod, feeling the weight of their approval. Richard was my biggest advocate. At a company gala, he stood on a stage, glass raised, and toasted me in front of the entire staff. "To Jordan Blake," he declared, his voice carrying across the room, "our golden goose." The applause was deafening. I stood there, tie loose, a smile I couldn't contain, surrounded by my team. Sarah nudging me, Mike clapping my back. For the first time, I felt like I'd made it. Like I was untouchable. But success can blind you. I was so caught up in the wins, the climbing numbers, that I didn't notice the shadows creeping closer. There were signs, small but sharp. Odd glances in the hallways. Executives who'd fall silent when I walked by. My name, suddenly absent from email chains I should have been on. I'd pass the break room and catch two board members whispering, their eyes darting to me before they changed the topic. I told myself it was nothing, just my mind playing tricks. I'd given Vertex my all, rebuilt it from the ground up. They needed me, didn't they? I'd earned their trust, their respect. I understood my place, or so I thought. The whispers grew harder to ignore. Meetings started happening without me, doors closed, schedules vague. I'd ask Richard about it, keeping my tone light, not wanting to sound like I was questioning him. Just board politics, he'd say, flashing that easy grin. You keep driving the numbers, Jordan. That's what matters. I tried to believe him. I kept my focus on the team, the deals, the momentum we'd built. But the unease lingered. One night, I stayed late, poring over a contract. The office was still, the only sound the hum of the air conditioning. Then I heard it, footsteps, followed by voices outside my door. Richard's voice, low, urgent, talking to someone I didn't know. He's too good, Richard said, the words slicing through the quiet. That's the problem. I froze, my pen hovering over the page. The words echoed in my head, cold and heavy. I wanted to march out, demand answers, but I couldn't move. The voices faded, leaving me with a chill I couldn't shake. I told myself I'd misheard, that it meant nothing. But deep down I knew. Something was shifting, and I was standing on unsteady ground. I understood sacrifice. I understood loyalty. But doubt? That was new. It burrowed into my thoughts, a quiet warning I tried to ignore. I kept leading, kept pushing, kept chasing the dream Richard had sold me. But the ground beneath me was cracking, and I was too busy building to see it. It was a Thursday, October 17th. The date is seared into my memory, sharp as a blade. I was in my office, burning the midnight oil, poring over sales reports. The numbers were my lifeline, proof of what I'd built. Then the door opened, and Richard Vaughn walked in. His face was a mask, unreadable, not the warm mentor I'd known. He sat across from me, hands folded like he was delivering a verdict. Jordan, he said, his voice cold, practiced, we're making changes. I waited, expecting another one of his grand speeches about the future. Instead, he leaned forward, eyes fixed on the desk. The board's decided to let you go. The words hit like a punch. I froze, my pulse hammering in my ears. What? What? I stammered, my voice cracking. He didn't look at me. It's just business, he said, the words flat, rehearsed. We're bringing in new leadership. New leadership? I'd doubled Vertex Dynamics revenue. I'd dragged their sinking ship to $12 million, turned their name into one client's trusted. I'd given them 5 years of my life, my sweat, my sleepless nights. And now I was expendable? I opened my mouth to argue, to demand answers, but Richard stood, already halfway to the door. HR will handle the details, he said, and then he was gone. I sat there, alone, the reports still open on my desk. The office felt smaller, the walls closing in. My mind raced, replaying every moment, every late night, every deal I'd closed. I'd saved their company, hadn't I? I'd earned their loyalty. But Richard's words echoed, it's just business. Cold. Final. Like I was a line item to be erased. The next morning, they sent security to escort me out. Security. Like I was a thief, not the man who'd rebuilt their empire. I packed my office in a daze, shoving awards and photos into a cardboard box. My team, my family, the people I'd trained, laughed with, fought for, stood in the hallway, eyes on the floor. Sarah, my sales manager, looked away, her jaw tight. Mike, the rookie who'd idolized me, stared at his shoes. Lena, who'd always had my back, turned her head. 5 years of loyalty, of trust, vanished in a single morning. I walked out of Vertex Dynamics with that box under my arm, the weight of their silence heavier than anything I carried. I drove home through a downpour, the rain smearing the world into a blur. My mind churned, circling the same questions. Why? What had I missed? I'd heard the whispers, seen the closed doors, but I'd trusted Richard. I'd trusted the board. I'd trusted the dream. I understood sacrifice. I understood hard work. But betrayal? That was new, a wound I didn't know how to dress. The days that followed were a fog. I barely left my apartment, the blinds drawn, the world outside a distant hum. My phone stayed silent. No calls from Sarah, no text from Mike, no apologies from Richard. The absence was louder than any words. I'd built a family at Vertex, or so I thought. Now, I was a ghost, erased from their story. I kept replaying that Thursday, dissecting every detail. Richard's cold voice. His refusal to meet my eyes. The board's decision, delivered like a guillotine. I thought of the gala, his toast, calling me the golden goose. Had it all been a lie? Had he been planning this while he clapped my shoulder, while he smiled? The questions gnawed at me, relentless, but answers were nowhere to be found. I tried to move on. I polished my resume, scrolled job boards, but every click felt hollow. Vertex had been my life, my proof that I could rise from nothing. Losing it wasn't just a job gone. It was a piece of myself, carved out and discarded. I'd wake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering where I'd gone wrong. Had I pushed too hard? Trusted too much? The doubts piled up, heavy as the rain that night. A week later, I was sitting at my kitchen table, a laptop glowing in the dark. I hadn't checked my email in days, couldn't bear the thought of rejection letters or silence. But something made me open it that night. Among the spam and bills was a message, no subject, no sender's name. Just 6 words, stark and commanding. They lied to you. Check the financials. My breath caught. I read it again, then a third time, the words burning into me. My heart raced, a spark cutting through the haze. I hadn't slept properly in days, hadn't eaten much either, but this woke me up. Who sent it? Why? The anonymity was a taunt, but the message was a lifeline. I leaned closer, my hands trembling as I clicked reply, typing. Who are you? The email bounced back, undeliverable. Whoever sent it was a shadow, but their words were a map. Check the financials. I'd spent years building those numbers, knowing every deal, every client. If there was a lie, I'd find it. I started digging that night. I pulled up old reports I'd saved, spreadsheets I'd forgotten about. My apartment became a war room, papers scattered across the table, coffee mugs piling up. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew I'd recognize it when I saw it. The numbers were my language, my truth. If Vertex was hiding something, it was buried there. The first hours were chaos, data points that didn't align, deals I couldn't place. My eyes burned, but I kept going, driven by those 6 words. I thought of Richard's face, his rehearsed dismissal. I thought of my team's silence, their averted eyes. I thought of the life I'd poured into Vertex, only to be cast aside. Betrayal had broken me, but now it was fuel. I understood loss. I understood pain. But purpose? That was new, and it was pulling me forward. The anonymous email had lit a fuse in me, and I wasn't going to let it burn out. I started with the only tools I had left, my laptop, a stack of old files, and a hunger for answers. I pulled every report I could still access, revenue statements, contracts, emails I'd saved before they locked me out of Vertex Dynamics system. At first, it was like wading through a swamp. Numbers didn't align. Deals I'd closed seemed to vanish or shift to unfamiliar accounts. It was chaos, a puzzle with half the pieces missing. But I kept digging. Night after night, my apartment became a bunker, papers strewn across the table, my eyes burning from hours at the screen. I wasn't just looking for mistakes. I was hunting for the truth. And then, after days of dead ends, I saw it. A pattern, subtle but undeniable. Vertex Dynamics wasn't just thriving on my work. They were hiding something, burying it deep in the numbers I'd helped create. The pattern led me to Claire Dawson. She'd joined Vertex 6 months before that Thursday, before Richard sat me down and cut me loose. I remembered the day he introduced her, his voice booming with pride. Claire Dawson, he'd said, the future of Vertex Dynamics. She was polished, confident, her handshake firm but cold. I'd thought she was just another executive, another suit climbing the ladder. I'd smiled, welcomed her, even toasted her at a team dinner. But the financials told a different story, one I hadn't seen coming. Millions of dollars were being funneled into accounts I didn't recognize, shell accounts, tucked away like secrets. Deals I'd spent months securing, clients I'd won through late-night calls and cross-country flights, were reattributed to Claire's team. My name was erased from the records, my legacy rewritten as hers. Every contract, every victory I'd bled for, was being stolen. And Richard? His signature was on every transfer, every reassignment, every lie. The man who'd called me his golden goose was orchestrating it all. I sat back, my hands shaking, the truth sinking in. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate, calculated. Claire wasn't just climbing the ladder. She was shoving me off it. And Richard, the mentor I'd trusted, the man I'd looked up to, was her accomplice. I thought of his smile, his warm words, the coffee chats where he'd made me feel like family. It was all a performance, a mask to keep me working while they planned my exit. I understood loyalty. I understood trust. But this was greed, raw and ugly. They'd built their castle on my back, used my victories to prop themselves up, then kicked me into the dirt when I was no longer useful. The betrayal cut deeper now, not just a wound but a fire, burning hotter with every discovery. I needed more than numbers. I needed proof, something solid to confirm what the financials hinted at. So I reached out to Sarah, my old sales manager, the one person I hoped hadn't turned her back completely. I sent her a text, kept it vague. Can we talk? She replied hours later, a single word. Where? We met at a dive bar on the edge of town, a place with sticky tables and dim lights. Sarah looked different, tired, her eyes darting to the door every few seconds. She slid into the booth, her voice low. Jordan, she whispered, they're cleaning house. Anyone loyal to you is gone. Mike's out. Lena's on probation. It's a purge. I leaned forward, my voice steady despite the anger bubbling inside. What's going on, Sarah? What aren't you telling me? She hesitated, her fingers twisting a napkin. Then she reached into her bag and slid a USB drive across the table. This is what you need, she said. Emails, memos, plans. But be careful, Jordan. They're watching. I took the drive, my heart racing. Who's they? I asked. She shook her head, already standing. Just be careful, she repeated, and then she was gone, slipping out into the night. That night, I plugged the USB into my laptop, my hands unsteady. The files were a goldmine. Emails between Richard and Claire, memos marked confidential, plans I'd never been privy to. I read until dawn, each message a new cut. They'd been plotting for months, long before that Thursday. My firing wasn't about performance, wasn't about new leadership. It was about power. Claire wanted control of Vertex, wanted her name on every win, and Richard wanted a puppet he could steer. I was in the way, too successful, too independent. They couldn't rewrite the story with me still in it. One email stopped me cold. Claire to Richard, 3 months before my exit. Blake's numbers are too strong. He's a liability. We move now or lose the narrative. Richard's reply was brief, agreed. Handle it. Handle it. Like I was a problem to be swept under the rug. I stared at the screen, my jaw tight, the words blurring as rage took over. They'd planned every step, from the whispers I'd ignored to the board's final vote. I could have stopped there. I could have walked away, let the anger fester, let them win. But I didn't. The USB drive was more than proof. It was a weapon. They'd taken my job, my team, my pride, but they wouldn't take my fight. I understood now, not just the betrayal but the game they were playing. Greed had built their castle, but truth could tear it down. I started organizing the evidence, cross-referencing emails with financials, building a case that couldn't be ignored. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I knew it mattered. Sarah's warning echoed. They're watching, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd been broken, but I was rebuilding, piece by piece, fueled by the truth I'd uncovered. I understood pain. I understood loss. But clarity? That was new. It sharpened my edges, gave me a purpose I hadn't felt since Vertex. They thought they'd buried me, but they'd only planted a seed. And I was ready to grow. The truth was in my hands now. Emails, financials, the USB drive Sarah had risked so much to give me. It was a weapon, sharp and heavy, and I was ready to use it. A lawsuit crossed my mind, but I dismissed it fast. Lawsuits are slow, tangled in red tape, and I didn't want a courtroom victory years from now. No, I wanted Richard and Claire to feel what I'd felt that Thursday. Exposed, powerless, stripped of the world they'd built on my back. I wanted their castle to crumble, and I wanted it to happen now. I spent days weighing my options, pacing my apartment, the papers for my investigation scattered like a map of their lies. I could have leaked the files online, let the internet tear them apart, but that felt reckless, too easy to dismiss as a disgruntled ex-employee's rant. I needed credibility, someone who could amplify the truth and make it undeniable. That's when I thought of Emily Chun, a reporter I'd met at a Vertex event 2 years back. She wrote for a major business outlet, known for digging into corporate scandals with a relentless edge. If anyone could break this story, it was her. I found her contact in an old email, my fingers hesitating over the keyboard. This was it, no turning back. I typed a message, kept it short. I have evidence of fraud at Vertex Dynamics. Can we talk? I attached a sample of the financials, just enough to hook her, and hit send. My heart raced as the email vanished into the void. I'd just thrown a match into the darkness, and I didn't know how big the fire would grow. Emily replied within hours, her tone professional but curious. We met at a coffee shop downtown, a neutral spot far from Vertex's orbit. I arrived early, my hands restless, the USB drive burning a hole in my pocket. When she walked in, I recognized her immediately. Sharp eyes, notepad in hand, no nonsense. "Jordan," she said, sitting across from me, "what have you got?" I laid it out, piece by piece. The shell accounts, the reattributed deals, the emails between Richard and Claire, plotting my exit while they stole my work. I handed her the USB drive, my voice steady despite the anger simmering inside. "This is bigger than me," I told her. "They're defrauding shareholders, rewriting the books to prop up Claire." Richard signed off on every move. Emily listened, her pen moving fast, her face unreadable. When I finished, she leaned back, studying me. "This is explosive," she said, "but it's risky. You're sure you want to go public?" I thought of that Thursday, Richard's cold dismissal, my team's silence. I thought of the years I'd given Vertex, only to be discarded. "I'm sure," I said. "They don't get to walk away from this." She nodded, tucking the USB drive into her bag. "I'll need time to verify," she said. "If this checks out, we'll move fast." I left the coffee shop with a strange mix of relief and dread. The truth was out of my hands now, in the hands of someone I barely knew. I'd taken the first step, but the path ahead was uncertain. Emily worked like lightning. Within days, she was emailing me questions, cross-referencing the financials with public records, chasing leads I hadn't even considered. She interviewed former Vertex employees, carefully, off the record, piecing together a story that was bigger than I'd realized. The fraud wasn't just about erasing my work. It was about inflating Vertex's value to lure investors, all while Claire and Richard positioned themselves as the company's saviors. I stayed in the shadows, feeding Emily what she needed but keeping my distance. Sarah's warning, "They're watching," still echoed, and I wasn't naive enough to think Richard and Claire wouldn't fight back. Every day, I checked the news, waiting for the bomb to drop. My apartment felt like a holding cell, the waiting unbearable but necessary. I understood patience now, the discipline of letting a plan unfold. Then, on a Monday morning, it happened. Emily's story hit the front page of her outlet's website, the headline screaming, "Vertex Dynamics accused of fraud. Insider reveals damning evidence." By noon, it was everywhere, picked up by every major business channel, trending on social media, dissected by analysts. The story laid it all bare: the shell accounts, the stolen deals, the emails that showed Richard and Claire's hands deep in the scheme. My name wasn't mentioned. Emily had promised anonymity, but the evidence was mine, and it was ironclad. Vertex Dynamics unraveled faster than I'd imagined. By midday, their stock was in freefall, investors pulling out as the numbers tanked. Shareholders were livid, flooding the board with demands for answers. The board, caught off guard, scrambled into an emergency meeting, their carefully curated image shattering. Richard tried to spin it, issuing a statement about misunderstandings and ongoing reviews. But the emails were too damning, the financials too clear. No charm, no silver hair, could save him now. Claire moved first. By Wednesday, she'd resigned, her departure announced in a curt press release that cited personal reasons. I could almost see her, packing her office in the dead of night, her polished facade crumbling. Richard held on longer, clinging to his throne, but the board had no choice. By the end of the week, he was out, forced into early retirement, with a severance package that sparked its own outrage. I watched it unfold from my apartment, the news playing on a loop. Every headline, every stock drop, felt like a release, a weight lifting. I hadn't just exposed them. I'd stripped them of the power they'd stolen from me. They'd felt what I'd felt that Thursday, the ground giving way, the world they'd built collapsing. I didn't get my job back. I didn't want it. Vertex Dynamics was a house of lies, a machine that chewed up trust and spit out greed. I was done building it, done believing in its promises. But the fallout gave me something better than a title or a paycheck. It gave me clarity, a strength I hadn't known I had. I thought of that Thursday, Richard's cold words, the team's silence. I thought of the nights spent digging, the USB drive, Emily's relentless pursuit. I'd been betrayed, broken, but I'd fought back. I'd taken their lies and turned them into a spotlight, shining on their greed. I understood betrayal now. I understood revenge. But more than that, I understood myself, who I was when the world turned against me, who I could be when I refused to stay down. The fire I'd started had burned their castle to the ground, but it hadn't consumed me. I'd walked through it, come out the other side, and found something new. Not just strength, but purpose. I wasn't the man who'd walked into Vertex 5 years ago, naive and trusting. I was better, sharper, ready for what came next. After the fire I'd set at Vertex Dynamics burned out, I stood in the ashes, wondering what came next. The headlines had faded, Richard and Claire were gone, and the company I'd once poured my soul into was a husk, scrambling to rebuild its reputation. I could have lingered, savoring their downfall, but that wasn't me anymore. I'd exposed their lies, reclaimed my power, and now I needed to move forward. Not back to who I was, but towards something new, something mine. I started my own company, small and unassuming, built from the ground up in a rented office with creaky floors and secondhand desks. No boardrooms, no corporate games, no whispers behind closed doors. Just a handful of people who believed in the same thing I did. Trust. Not the kind you sell, but the kind you earn, day by day, through honesty and hard work. My team was lean. 5 of us at first, including a coder named Tara who'd left a tech giant for a fresh start, and a sales lead named Dev who reminded me of myself, hungry and unafraid. We weren't chasing millions yet, just a chance to do things right. The early days were tough. I'd lie awake at night, second-guessing every decision. Had I moved too fast? Could I lead again after Vertex? The betrayal still lingered, a shadow that crept in when I was alone. Some nights, I'd see Richard's face, his silver hair, his charming smile, the cold mask he wore that Thursday when he fired me. I'd hear his voice, smooth as ever, calling me the golden goose, then dismissing me with "it's just business." The memories stung, sharp and uninvited, pulling me back to the pain of that day, the silence of my team, the weight of being cast out. But then I'd walk into our little office, see Tara debugging code with a coffee in hand, hear Dev pitching a client with the same fire I'd once had. I'd look at the logo on my laptop, a simple design, a tree with deep roots, symbolizing what I wanted to build, and the sting would fade. I wasn't just starting a company. I was rebuilding myself, piece by piece, proving I could rise without Vertex, without Richard, without the lies that had once defined my world. The past didn't vanish, though. It was there in quiet moments, in the doubts that whispered when I was tired. I thought of Sarah, risking everything to slip me that USB drive, her warning about being careful. I thought of the team I'd lost, Mike's easy grin, Lena's sharp instincts, the family we'd been before they turned away. I wondered where they were now, if they'd seen the news, if they regretted their silence. Some days, I wanted to reach out, to ask why they'd let me go without a word. But I didn't. The answers wouldn't change what happened, and I was done chasing ghosts. Instead, I focused on what I could control. My company grew, slowly but steadily. We landed our first client, a small retailer who trusted us because we listened, not because we promised the moon. Then another, a startup that liked our honesty. Each win felt different from Vertex's triumphs. There, success had been a race, a climb to impress Richard and the board. Here, it was personal, a testament to what I could build when I trusted myself. Betrayal breaks you. It strips you bare, leaves you questioning who you are, what you're worth. But it also builds you if you let it. The Jordan Blake who walked into Vertex 5 years ago was naive, eager to please, blind to the cracks in the dream he chased. He believed in Richard, in loyalty, in the idea that hard work guaranteed a place at the table. That man was gone, shattered that Thursday when the truth came crashing down. But from those pieces, I'd forged someone new. Someone stronger, wiser, unafraid to stand alone. I wasn't perfect. I still had moments of anger, flashes of what could have been if Vertex hadn't turned on me. But those moments were fleeting. I'd learned to let them pass, to focus on the present, the team I was building, the clients who believed in us, the life I was carving out. No one could take that away from me. Not Richard, not Claire, not the ghosts of my past. I'd fought for this, earned it through the fire of betrayal and the clarity of truth. I thought back to the game I'd played at Vertex, The one I didn't understand until it was too late. The whispers, the closed meetings, the lies woven into the numbers I trusted. I'd been a pawn then, moving blindly on their board. But I'd learned the rules, turned their game against them. I'd exposed their greed, watched their castle crumble, and walked away not with vengeance, but with freedom. I understood the game now. I'd played it, and I'd won, not by their rules, but by mine. My company was still small, still growing, but it was enough. It was a start, a seed planted in soil I'd tilled myself. Some days, I'd sit at my desk, the hum of the office around me, and feel a quiet pride. Not the loud, fleeting rush of Vertex's gala toasts, but something deeper, steadier. I was building something real, something that didn't rely on lies or betrayal. And in that, I found peace. The road from that Thursday to now wasn't straight. It was jagged, lined with pain and doubt, but it led me here. I understood betrayal, its bitter weight, its power to break. I understood revenge, the fire it sparked, the release it brought. But most of all, I understood myself, who I was when the world turned its back, who I could be when I chose to rise. I wasn't defined by Vertex, by Richard's lies, or by the team that let me go. I was defined by what I'd built, by the strength I'd found, by the future I was writing. I'd won, not because I destroyed them, but because I created something better. And that was enough.